Empire.
Welcome to the latest edition of All's Caps. I am AP hockey writer Steve Wino, joined by former Capitals defenseman Karl Ozner. Later on, we're going to be joined by Capitals alum and Penguins Stanley Cup winner Steve Oleksy. He's got some great stories about the one sip of alcohol he's ever had, some nice things to say about Karl Ozner, and actually some nice things to say about Sidney Crosby too. But we'll get to that. Karl, let's first talk about the Caps and kind of where they're at right now. A bunch of injuries going on. What is your feel about this team right now? Having gone through an NHL career with injuries and guys getting hurt and all of that, where do you think this team is right now?
Yeah, it's been pretty crazy. I know there's been a lot of teams that have had to deal with it. Looking at Colorado, they've had a ton going on right now too, and they're just kind of treading water right now. And the Caps have had a ton themselves, but they seem to be in a much better spot. And one of the things that we talked about being so important was last season was having depth on the teams. The teams that were going to do well were the ones that could fill in, have guys that could fill in and excel when some of the bigger guys maybe needed some time off or banged up, whatever it may be. And so we seem to be in that same spot right now. We've had a lot of young guys, new faces in this lineup so far. It's been kind of a revolving door of the way the lineup has shaken out, and it's unfortunate. It's more than they wanted to deal with, and guys that are in key positions too that haven't been able to play. But just looking at even the last game, they're having to rely so heavily on a few guys, and over a grind of a season, that's there's so much that can go on, and you don't want to see your top guys injured. So it's going to be tough, but you need to see a little bit of a trend in the upward direction, and there's been a lot of up and down so far, so it's been tough to deal with.
And the latest new face is Zach Fukali, making his on Thursday night, making his NHL debut. He is a big Jose Theodore fan, so he asked to wear number 60 in honor of Jose Theodore. You played with Jose Theodore. What was he like?
Yeah, so I played with Jose, and I was actually part of the same organization as Zach too. So I will just say this about Zach: is he's an awesome guy. He's got his head on right. He's one of those happy guys, being at the rink, big smile. A really good goaltender too, and very focused. So I think that's really nice to have him, get in between the pipes there and see what he can do. And Jose was one of those guys on the team that it was like, I say the same thing about Fedorov. It was, you come into the room and it's like, what's Fedorov doing? What's Jose doing? What can I learn from them? And Joe was just, he had full sleeve tattoo, great dresser, obviously a great track record in the NHL already, and everybody knew who he was. And I'll just say that, one of the things that, well, first of all, Jose, he was the one that got me out of my superstition. So I'll always be grateful that he was able to, or at least minimize some of the superstitions that I had. So it didn't end up being take a toll on me throughout my career. But also he was one of those guys too that I guess opened my eyes to how the game is thought. It's not always just, play hard and play with skill. You got to think the game. You got to try and outthink the players. It's not, you don't always have to just react to guys. You can make them do something so that your reaction doesn't have to be just a straight up reaction, or it doesn't have to be a guess. So when I say that, the example I always tell people is in net, he would bait me all the time, and he would give me blocker. I would shoot blocker. Next thing you know, I've just hit him in the chest. And I haven't even hit him in the blocker. I've hit him in the chest because he's just slid over there and stopped it. And then the next time he would, think that he would do the same thing, give me blocker. And I'm like, okay, I'm not going to go blocker. I'm going glove. And then he would just stay there, and I would hit him straight in the chest again. And it was just things like that I'm like, okay, this is interesting. I can't just go out there and just play on my own. I got to start playing with my head a little bit more and playing with other guys' heads and just, trying to outsmart them. And, it didn't always work because there's a lot of really smart hockey players out there, but Jose is just a guy that opened my eyes to that. And, I still keep in touch with him sometimes too, which is great because, it's I always think it's nice to, especially legends in the league, where you get a chance to pick their brain every now and then. So Joe was one of those guys just very, very fortunate to play with.
And you're one of the more superstitious players I can ever remember being around. What did Jose do? Because even by that point that I was around you, you were still superstitious. But what did he do to kind of calm some of that down for you?
Well, so normally the goalies are the ones that have all these crazy routines with throwing balls up against the wall and catching them and up in the air, and just trying to find it with your peripheral vision and stuff. But I was also one of those guys that did that stuff, and I think maybe part of it was just my workout routine growing up. We did a lot of reaction stuff, a lot of vision exercise, and so I just assumed I should probably do this one before I play a game. It's good when I'm working out. It's probably good for a game. And Joe saw me doing that game in, game out, because he would be out there as well doing a few things, and then he'd see me pull up the ladder and start running the ladder and doing all this other stuff. And all he did was just came up to me and he's like, "Hey, I've been watching what you do for your warm-ups before the games, and it's a lot, man. It's way too much. I used to do things like this too, and you just have to find out which things are the most important and cut it down to that, because it's too long of a season, it's too long of a career, and you'll just absolutely blow your mind up." So I was very thankful. I think I probably took out maybe one or two things from that day on, and then the next year I did like a pretty big reset, and my superstitions were things that were much more manageable and not such a full-on workout before games like I was doing.
Yeah, I didn't realize Jose deserves such credit for your NHL career.
He really does, definitely for the mental side of the game and for giving me a little bit more longevity. I didn't have to warm up as crazy as I always did. That's one thing that you always notice, at least I noticed, whenever I'd start my warm up before a game, if I started sweating like right away, I knew that my body was tired and that I needed to be smart. Maybe don't do as big of a warm up, be a little bit more, careful with my shift length. And that was just something that was kind of interesting too. Everybody knows how their body feels usually within the first couple minutes of either warm up or the game or whatever you're doing at pregame skate. You kind of know how you're feeling. So yeah, it's just interesting to know that he was aware of what I was doing and not just himself. So he's, like I said, just a smart guy.
Yeah, and you mentioned Fukali. He was the goalie on Canada's World Junior team, and I don't know, you were in the middle of your NHL career at that point. You're a World Junior guy as well for Canada. Did you watch any of Zach in that tournament, or know by the time you got to Montreal how, because this was a highly touted goalie and it has kind of bounced around a lot like our buddy Steve Oleksy has.
Yeah, so it was interesting because when I got to Montreal, everyone was talking about him and really, really pumping him up, and so I was really curious to see what he was like on the ice. And what I noticed was that he clearly had really, really great fundamentals. But what also I noticed is that he is in a very, very hard position playing in Quebec, being a guy that speaks the language. Oh, yeah. That is a absolute mental grind on guys that are out there. And I think that was probably something that maybe weighed on him a little bit, because, also you have Carey Price as your number one. It makes it pretty tough. It seems like a mountain to climb to ever be the guy, and it is. And so I noticed that, and I've listened to him talk a bunch of times since then. And I talked with him, actually ran into him one day at a restaurant in Ballston, and just getting to chat with him and see where he's at now and where his head's at. It just seems like, he's just got clear eyes. He's figured out this thing, and how you just cannot be worrying about all these extra voices and everything else that's going on, and just play the game. And so, I know what Zach can do, and given the chance, I think he can, without a doubt, do that. And I know there's two young goalies here that kind of have the reins right now, but Zach is a guy that can easily help out this team when they need something.
Sure. And I didn't give you enough credit, Karl. 2 World Junior gold medals. One as captain of Canada. We'll play World Junior bingo in a month or so when we're talking about the World Junior tournament. But Zach Fukali is actually the answer to my favorite trivia question of all time. Every other player on that 2015 World Junior team has played in an NHL game until except for Zach Fukali, until Thursday night against Detroit for the Capitals. So congratulations to Zach Fukali on joining the rest of his teammates from that ridiculous 2015 World Junior team. And so we're going to be back next segment with Steve Oleksy telling some stories. This is a guy who Karl and Steve played together for a little bit with the Capitals, won a Stanley Cup with the Penguins in 2017. We will be back with him right after this. Welcome back to All's Caps with former Capitals defenseman Karl Ozner. I'm AP hockey writer Steve Wino. We are joined by old friend Steve Oleksy, played for the Capitals for a little bit, won the Stanley Cup with the Pittsburgh Penguins in 2017. Before we get to all the hockey stuff, Steve, let's catch you up on what have you been doing in your life, all the 17,000 things you've been up to.
I like to stay busy, through hockey. One of the things I've been able to take a little bit more full scale since partially semi-retiring a year ago, is Eastside Elite Hockey. And obviously what we do is we run high-end leagues and tournaments, and I've been able to scale that a little bit since retirement. So that's keeping me super, super busy, as well as starting a coffee company and a few other things that I have to keep under the hat for a bit.
Steve-O, let's get into that Eastside Elite, because I've been hearing about this for years now. Obviously, hearing you chat about it, and I was just reading about it the other day. How many players? You have over 200 players in this now. How many teams?
Yeah, we are actually have far exceeded 200 players. So back in 2008, starting it as a summer league for pro, college, and junior guys. We started out with 8 teams. Last year, a little bit of a challenging year with everything that we're faced with in the world today. But last year in our main league, we had 16 teams with 14 a roster. And that's not including, that's for the main league. And then we have a high school league. And last year we had a 07-08 youth program as well, where we had 4 teams there in each of those. So we deal with a number of players through a number of different leagues and tournaments.
Holy smokes! I mean, so one of the things that I love about you, Steve-O, is that you're such a great networker. You're always thinking about, post hockey. It seemed like you're always thinking about post hockey and making sure that you had a good foundation, which is what I love too. And I feel like that was something that we really gelled on. And well, I know this is funny, actually. So just the other day, I get a text from Steve-O just saying, hey, you in shape or are you not in shape? You been skating? What's going on? And sure enough, now we're making plans. Me, Steve-O, Mike Green, and then Mike Harrington, who was one of the trainers of with the Caps here. And we're going to get back on the ice here and start to get in shape. But Steve-O is our benchmark. This guy's always top in shape. Always the guy that, if we were at the hotel pool or whatever, peels off the shirt, he puts all of us to shame. He's the only one that looks like a professional athlete. So he's going to do it to us again. I'm getting a little bit nervous.
Are you guys thinking of coming out of retirement here? Is that what we're talking about?
Maybe a men's league team. What do you think, Steve-O?
Well, I think with the crew that we have, and I know your work ethic, I think you're selling yourself a little bit short there. But I think with our crew, we could have a pretty decent, maybe a senior C team out there in DC.
The only thing I'm worried about is that if there's any sort of stiff breeze with your skin, you're going to get that cut up face and bruised face like all over again. That was one of the funniest things. As soon as the season started, your face looked it was amazing how many bruises you had on that thing.
Well, I'm going to get into a funny little story. I didn't want to share with anybody, but for this conversation, I feel it's only right. So as I'm getting back into shape the other day, I'm getting back into it and feeling good, riding the bike, and I'm head down churning. We're doing 20-second sprints. And the gentleman who's training me he's stiff. He's hard. So exactly what I need right now. I've got my head down and I'm churning. And about 12 seconds into the 20-second sprint, head down, I crank myself in the head with one of the bars. Hand on top of the head, I'm bleeding. I'm like, this is crazy. I'm like, only me I would find some way to bust up my head working out to get back ready to play. So
that's amazing.
still find a way to be cut, bruised, or something, or both. So.
No kidding. Doesn't surprise me one bit that you have that going on. This was so I, of course, got to do some research nowadays with all the guests coming on, and I didn't realize this, but okay. So you, what was it 2008, 2009? Was that your first pro year?
2009 was my first pro year. Yeah. So I got a little bit of a late start there, and the whole story leading to my pro career is kind of crazy. So pushed me back a little bit, but 2009 was my first year.
First year, and then between 08, 09 to 2012 and 13, correct me if I'm wrong, but you played for 8 different teams in the Coast, the IHL, AHL, and then making your way to the NHL?
Yeah, it was, and it seems like 20. So I'm glad that you reminded me it was only 8. But yeah, it was a pretty challenging little bit there in this, the story leading to it. I was very fortunate to play college hockey, but didn't really have a resume there, and wasn't a household name by any means, and didn't want my college experience to be my last hockey experience. So I decided to give myself 2 years out of college to just try to play pro, and didn't really know what that even meant at the time. Knew that I had completed my education and gave myself a 2-year grace period. And stepping into pro my first year, getting cut 3 times, I was like, I don't know if this is for me. And I started to go to job interviews, and the second year was much of the same, and then got an opportunity and just kind of decided that I'm going to give it a couple more years, and things ended up working out.
One of the things that no one else, maybe but me, cares about here is that when you signed your first contract with the Capitals, Adam Oates and George McPhee signed you. I actually broke that story when I was covering the team for the Washington Times. So I was immediately invested in your career from that moment on. What was it like getting that call, your first NHL opportunity, your first NHL contract?
It was surreal. And when you go back to the whole story, and I didn't touch on it previously, but I played college baseball out of high school. So I played a year of college baseball. Didn't love it at the college level. It was a lot. And being from Michigan, or 6 months out of the year, we're practicing indoors, and practices are 6 hours, and it became very long and very, very routine. And anybody who knows me knows that I like constant excitement and something different. And that's exactly what hockey provided. So, for me, that signing and when George and Adam gave me that opportunity, it was like, all the stuff I went through my first year pro, all the stuff I went through in college, the decision I had to make between baseball and hockey, everything leading to that moment, that it was kind of, that was kind of the climax of everything, was just signing that. And then whatever happened from there, I mean, I remember how excited I was when Hershey decided to give me an opportunity, and I signed my first American League one-way, my 4th year of pro after everything I had been through. For me, that was a great accomplishment. And then, just being a part of Hershey and the whole city and the organization, and it really allowed me to enjoy hockey and have fun and be a part of something. And I think I was having success that year because of the people around me, throughout the whole organization. So to sign that NHL deal was something I never even thought about, and it was just kind of, there were so many steps that led to that signing that it was really, 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 really special to me. And, the organization and the people involved, from A to Z, are people that really hold a special place in my heart.
I was super impressed by, you were maybe crushing a couple Red Bulls every now and then, but never any beers with the guys. I'm always curious. Well, 2 things off of this. One is, if you would still always want to come out with the guys and be around the boys, because you're that guy. You're just an awesome teammate. You want to spend time with people and get to know them. But I don't know, how did you feel about seeing, the guys get on the plane and have a beer, or on the bus have a beer, or go out and do what they're doing, whether it was on the road or at dinner? Did that ever go through your head that, maybe I have a little bit of a leg up on these guys because, the clean living that you got, or just seeing the other guys thinking, what are they doing? Because, I thought that myself too sometimes, the nights where, I knew I'm going to really be smart here and treat the body right, and other guys not necessarily doing that. Did it ever go through your mind thinking, what are these guys doing right now?
Well, I can tell you this right now. Now that I'm partially retired, I can let out my secrets. And I think a big part of my career was being the best guy when everybody else was hungover. I would go 100% every practice, and I'd go 125 when guys were feeling a little bit under the weather the night before. And in all seriousness, it was something that and everybody kind of asked me, and it wasn't a big part of it, but me as a guy I needed every advantage I could, and I needed to limit any distraction, and every distraction I could. So, for me, that was just one of those things early on in my life. I decided to kind of stay away from it and just focus on what I needed to focus on. And I think, a guy like me that was constantly up and down and like you just touched on it, from the IHL to the East Coast League to the AHL to the back, all over the place. I needed to give myself the best chance to succeed. And that was one of those things. By eliminating that, I always felt my best. I joke about it, but there were practices where some guys were feeling a little bit under the weather, and I was full go. And for me, that was just a very, very important part of my career. And I felt I never needed that to be social, and I could go hang out with the guys and do everything they were doing. But when it came down to it, I wasn't in a position, and I didn't have the skill set where I could afford to go out and have too good of a time and feel it the next day. I was a guy who had to be 100% of the time. And, that was one of the reasons that I just kind of shied away from that, but I still did have a great time with all the guys, and I was able to do that. And it was something in my personality I had to develop, being able to be social, hang out in those environments and not do it.
What was your first drink of alcohol? Was that out of the Stanley Cup?
That was my first and last and only, unless I win another one. And so I think it's probably my last sip. But yes, that was my first sip of alcohol at 32 years old, and that's the only sip of alcohol I've had was out of the Stanley Cup. And I know this is all Cap's podcast, but I can talk about it a little more.
You can. That's okay.
Since you guys got the Stanley Cup a year later, but I have a super, super cool picture of Sid dishing up my one and only sip of alcohol. And it's a very, very special moment for a lot of reasons, but being that is the only sip of alcohol I'll ever have in my life, I think it's a very special, and he actually signed a couple pictures for me, and it was a very special moment in or out of sports, knowing everything behind the meaning of that first sip.
So that leads me right into the next question that I'm sure you get asked all the time, because you're one of the few guys that's had the unique opportunity to play with and against, Sid and Ovi. Give us all the difference. What's your perspective on those guys? Because they play very different roles on the ice. I've heard a lot of stories about Sid. He's one of the guys that I, hated every single year until I kept hearing guys that have played with him and given us some backstory on him being a good guy and this and that. I didn't want to believe it. And so I'd like to hear your opinion on the ice and off the ice between those two guys, because he gets so much credit for being, Captain Canada, a great leader, this and that. But at the same time, I think, you tell me, being able to let loose and have fun with the guys and be a good personality. So I'd love to know the difference. And then what you saw on the ice too, because like I said, they're completely different players.
And that's coming from a hockey guy. You understand that they're very, very, very different players. You understand that they're both great leaders, right? But they both share very different leadership styles, right? Sid is a guy he's not going to come in and kick down doors. He's going to lead by. I love to use him for an example all the time. As I use Ovi as well. But Sid is a kind of guy who, everything he's accomplished and everything he's done, and my time in Pittsburgh, he was still the first guy on the ice and still the last guy off the ice. So is he extremely talented? Absolutely. He's not going to come and yell and scream. When he says something, he means it, but he leads by his play and his habits. And it's very, very contagious in that locker room, in that whole organization. It kind of sets a standard. I know it set a standard for me going over there from Washington from day one. And about that culture, it doesn't matter if you're there for 1 day or 10 years, you fall into that. And a lot of that comes from his habits and things like that. And playing with Ovi, he is such a dynamic player that, his leadership style is the ability to absolutely, score clutch goals and make game-breaking plays and things like that, and still be able to relate to the guys, right? And maybe a little bit different manner, but still relate to his teammates and things like that. But his leadership style is more putting a team on his back and at certain and clutch times. And Sid's was more the same stuff day after day after day, and the habits and the fine details. So playing with both of those guys are both incredible leaders. I learned a great deal from both of them. And I use them all the time because they're, the two best players of our generation. And they're two very different players, two very different leaders, and both very, very effective. And I think, all the Caps fans saw those results of, Ovi and how much he's changed and developed as a leader when you guys were able to win that Stanley Cup, right? I think everybody can agree that he changed as a person, as a player, and ultimately, you were able to get the results you wanted with that.
My favorite part about bringing people on for this is Karl Ozner stories. What is your best Karl Ozner story from your time playing with him?
You're gonna put me on the spot, but to go, and I'm gonna rewind a little bit, not to bounce all over the place, but you talk about my career and my career path to the NHL. It was a crazy path, but a lot of it wasn't about me. It was about the people around me. When I fell into a position in Boise, Idaho, I had an unbelievable leader in Marty Flickle, who at that time I was struggling to find confidence. I was struggling, I had got cut twice and before I went out to Boise. He was an older guy. He took me under his wing, showed me what it was like to be a pro. Had I not had him early on in my career, I don't think I would have had the success I did. And then moving through, I had some other great leaders. And you talk about Karl Ozner, and this isn't because he's on with us. I will tell anybody this, and I have a number of times. The first time I stepped into an NHL locker room was for my first NHL game. I had never been to a prospect camp. I had never been to a rookie camp. I had never been to camp at all. Stepping in there with that group, Ozzy was one of those guys who really, really, really took me under his wing, showed me what it was like at that level, created a nickname that I think faded really, really quickly, other than for a couple people, but really made me feel welcome. And, when you talk about stories and favorite stories, I like to share what people have done for me and how much they've helped me. And he was probably one of the biggest influences in that locker room, and one of the reasons I was able to come there and play and be myself. Just the person he was, and he's such a genuine person. To step into a locker room full of guys I didn't know, and him to show me that love and teach me all the things, and then created a nickname. Also, you can probably share that nickname. I don't think it's come out in the last 8 years, but
I leave those things up to the guys. Whatever they want to share, they go ahead and share. I don't want to expose anybody's stories on here without making sure I've done lots and lots of due diligence. But hold on, before we get into that, let's talk about Marty Flickle. What a name that is. What was the nickname with Flicks? Was that what it was?
Yeah, it was Flicks. It was Flicks.
Oh.
And I recently, the crazy hockey world, when I actually left Boise, there was an AHL team that was trying to call me up, and my coach at that level wasn't letting me go. So ultimately I ended up packing my whole apartment, and I showed up to the rink for practice, and I said, I appreciate everything you've done for me, but I'm going to take this opportunity. And if it doesn't work out, I'll recalculate after. And I showed up to practice in Boise, and this is back in 2010. 2010, I showed up to the rink, and I left from the rink, and I never turned back. And fortunately, things worked out with me in Bridgeport, and I stayed up the rest of the year. But I hadn't been back in, 10 plus years. And just recently I played an alumni event out in Boise, Idaho, and reconnected with Marty Flicks. And we've kind of rekindled the friendship. And when people are going different directions, it becomes a little bit challenging for us athletes. But we rekindled a friendship, and, we had a great time out in Boise. And now we're planning a couple vacations together and things like that. And he was a guy very much like yourself, Karl, that really, when I look at my career and the success that I was able to have, it's because of guys like you guys. And, I truly cherish and value that.
Well, I mean, really appreciate it, Steve-O. I think that you brought all those things that you said about me. You brought them yourself. So, I think that's why we're going to get along well in our, whatever we're going to call it, the Joe Schmo workout league that we got going on.
The replacements is already taken, so I don't think we can use that, but we'll come up with something clever and creative.
Yeah, one of you guys can drop the gloves and one of you can't. So I've just from watching you over the years, I know who's going to be the enforcer of this team.
I would have needed you the other day, Steve-O. Someone, my first ever experience at a post Caps game where people were getting into it. It was quite the interesting night.
I think those days are behind me, but if you need anything, Halsey, I've always got your back, buddy.
I'm gonna ask you one more question then, Steve. What's the most memorable fight you were ever in?
Oof. I would have to say the most memorable fight would have to be, and there's a lot that goes into this, but the most memorable fight was definitely the line brawl with Philly. I'm sure all Philly fans remember that. I'm sure all Washington fans remember that. But, tell that story. Me and LeCavier got tangled up, and I think I did a bit of damage there, but with all the nonsense that was going on and everything that was going on at the time, that's definitely the most memorable fight. And, when you turn that page, everybody was watching Tom Wilson and Wayne Simmons fight. We had no idea that Ray Emery had come down and had grabbed Holtby, and it was all behind us, and not one of us had saw that, until we turned around and we rushed in there. And then obviously I got paired up with LeCavier, and, being a part of that and looking back at that whole situation, we don't see that a lot in today's hockey. It's not like it was back in the old days where that happened much more often. So to be a part of something like that, that's the only line brawl I've ever been a part of. That is hands down the most memorable fight for me.
Yeah, very memorable for me as well. That was one of the ones that I was, it's like you kind of want to be a part of it, but you also don't know if you want to be a part of it. It was fun to watch. But this is another thing, Steve-O, that we, trying to figure out a good name for. So we'll take any recommendations you got. But trying to ask a few questions to everybody that comes on. I'll give you a fun score, some points at the end, even though the points don't matter. But I'm going to hit you with a couple tough ones. Let's see what you come up with. So.
Sounds like my career, Karl. Points don't matter.
Mine too. We all have fun and the points don't matter. That's exactly what it was. We called this Steve Oleksy career questions right here.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so the first one here is a lot of plane rides. What was your go-to thing to do on the plane? Some guys read, some guys play cards. What did you like to do?
I love to play cards. I'm a card addict. When we were in Washington there, I obviously wasn't in the card game all the time. So we had a good group of guys that played Risk as well. So always prefer cards, but I had to learn the game of Risk. And I think Wojtek Wolski took about $300 off me in about 2 plane trips. I said, maybe I'm not so good at this Risk game.
I will vouch for the Risk game. That was tons of fun on the plane. Me and Biggs would get into that every now and then too.
Oh yeah.
So, okay, next year is, since we're going to be doing some training together again, I need to know these 2 things: your favorite exercise and your least favorite exercise in the gym.
Oh, my favorite exercise would probably be the dead man's pose. I love that one. Nice way to wrap up the old workout where you just lay there and melt into the ground. That's probably my favorite.
I think we call it Shavasana. No.
Yeah. You can put a little spice on it, Karl, but for me, it's the dead man's pose. And I was, I'm never, I was built to go long distances, not go fast. And so any sprints, any bike sprints or anything like that, those are probably my least favorite.
Agreed. Totally agreed there. Okay. This one I was thinking about last night because I was trying to figure out what my answer would be. And I feel like you're a perfect guy for this. Would you rather play 5 full seasons in the NHL and win a Stanley Cup, or 15 full seasons, have a really solid career, but never win a cup?
Wow. That's deep. That's deep. Let's see. I think there's a lot that goes into that question, Karl. I'm going to rebuttal on that. It depends on what city, your teammates, monetary, there's a lot of things that go into that, but obviously being a part of the Stanley Cup, and was really, really special for me because once again, I talk about so many people that really helped me. And there was a lot of times throughout my career where I felt like giving up and, I more or less played for the people that were supporting me. So sharing that Stanley Cup with those people that, gave me the best chance to succeed, that being my parents and people who supported my whole career, sharing the Stanley Cup with them was definitely something that was very, very special. And I wouldn't trade it for a 15-year career. So I'd say 5 years with a Stanley Cup.
5 years with a win. Totally makes sense. And that was the exact same argument I had last night, was it all depends on the team that you're with. So we're on the same page. Okay, so let's take Risk out of this, the game Risk. What's your favorite board game?
Ooh, Trouble. I have a group of buddies from DC that I met while I was playing for the Caps. And when we all come together, that is the number one board game we play. And we play high stakes Trouble, believe it or not. And also I got Nathan Walker onto it too. Me and him used to play for coffees back when he was a first, second year guy. I think that wager would probably change now since he's had the success he has. But yeah, Trouble is definitely my go-to and not afraid to play for a little fun.
It's fun getting into trouble. Always remember that slogan. It was a solid one. Okay. Last one here for you. So besides East Side Elite, and it's Elite Coffee, I believe, right? Elite Coffee?
Yeah.
What product would you love to be the face of if you could choose any product? Is it Louis Vuitton because that's the toque that you have on, or is it something else?
You can't say this on the podcast because I can't see you guys' faces. You can't be right. I look like I'm in a jail cell here too. But coffee, there we go.
There's mine, Tofino.
Here we go. Now we can't end it like this. But yeah, I'm super, super, super into fashion, and I can probably thank one of your teammates for that. When I first came to you guys, I had the old garbage bag fit, Steve Harvey suit on, and being around Braden, he kind of opened me up to a different direction as far as fashion and something that I really, really like. And actually a very good friend of mine makes handmade hats, and it's kind of been my staple. I don't have one on right now, but if I could be the face of a brand, it would probably be Lash LaRue. He does the handmade hats that I love to wear. And then also another good friend of mine, Esquivel, makes handmade shoes and boots out in LA. And I always wear those too. So I would love to be a face of a couple brands that it's all about the craft of it, right? And that's one thing I've always loved is the craft of nice things. And every cut, everything is hand sewn. And so those are brands that I would love to represent if I had the opportunity.
I would have guessed Jets Pizza. Jets Pizza was the place you worked at, right? Before hockey? Or you owned? Remember this?
Jets Pizza was my first job. I was there for about 4 or 5 years. And I can tell you this, when I got cut 3 times my first year, I sat down at Jets headquarters with Eugene Jets, and I talked about running 3 pizza joints. And that was kind of my future at that time. And, luckily not long after that interview, when we sat down, some things ended up working out, and I got a chance to go out to Boise, and I put the old pizza future on the back burner, and was fortunate enough to make a career in hockey.
Oh, interesting. Jets Pizza.
I can still throw pie in the air, though. I can still throw pie in the air. Next episode, Ozzy, we'll get you into Jets, and we'll throw some pies in the air.
That definitely needs to be proved. I need to actually see that happen. I will not take anyone's word for that. Throwing dough in the air is not easy. So
no, we go back to the old Caps program. If you check it out, my first job was pizza chef. I put a little spice on it, make people think I was way more important than I was. But I put pizza chef. So that was my childhood.
That's absolutely amazing. All right. Well, that's all we have. That's the 6 questions there. So let me just add up the total here. Carry the one. So 101 points. You're the first person to break 100 points, Steve-O. And that's because I really, really respect question 3, the 5 years and win a cup. So that was a good answer. It definitely brought you over the mark.
So congratulations on first place. You never know how long that's going to last, because I don't even know how I add up these totals, but congrats on 101. And that was an absolute blast.
Well, you guys are awesome. Thank you for having me. And I'll slide you that 20 for the 101 points later, buddy.
Sounds great.
Thanks to Steve Oleksy for joining us. Yeah, thanks for joining us. Thanks to Karl Ozner for his Drew Carey routine as usual on the Whose Line Is It Anyway situation here. We'll be back on All's Caps. Welcome back to All's Caps. I'm AP hockey writer Steve Wino with former Capitals defenseman Karl Ozner. Steve Oleksy was never hungover playing. Did you ever have to practice hungover at some point during your NHL career?
Yeah, a few times. Well, there's always times where you have rookie party, and of course the coaches want you to sweat it out the next day. So, they're very mindful of you and how you're feeling and how hard to push and how hard not to push. And there's a couple things that we had, couple unwritten rules, or you don't ever really want to go too hard on somebody in the corner after a big night out. You want it to kind of give them a little bit extra space. And another thing that was always important, not necessarily everybody followed it, but we always like to say slap shots and hard passes, because that's a way to kind of fool everybody that you don't feel good. So make sure that all your shots are hard and all your passes, you just absolutely rip them. So then that way it doesn't look like you're just going through the motions. And it's like when a puck hits the glass, it always seems like a harder shot than maybe it is. And so that was one of the things that was important. But I remember there were some guys that just could not practice after a rookie party or whatever it was. And I remember one guy in particular who on one drill, he came in and he took one shot from probably the top of the circle, and he shot it out of the rink, over top of the glass, into the net. And then the next shot on the exact same drill came in to take another shot, toe picked, face planted on the ice, and then got sent off the ice after that. I remember thinking like, oh, holy smokes, this is why you do slap shots right here. Just keep it simple and keep it nice and flat on the ice. So there was a lot of times like that. Even, I mean, it's crazy to think, but like even during games, like some guys don't always treat their body, necessarily the right way. You get caught up in a city that's got a really great vibe. Like I'll always say Nashville. Nashville's one of the places where, you stay like right on the strip there. And so you want to go out and listen to some live music. You have a few pints, and then next thing you know, you probably had maybe 5 or 6 over 3-hour period, whatever it is. Then you have dinner and this and that. And then next thing you know, you wake up the next day, you're like, holy smokes, I had way too many beers the night before. And now we got to play Nashville, a team that comes at you super hard. And you're a little bit worried. But one of the things about playing guilty is that you play a little bit harder for some reason. I don't know what it is, just trying to play off that guilt. And I feel like I always had some of my best games in Nashville after listening to some live music the night before. So I wouldn't recommend it, but there's a little secret sauce in there, I think.
The playing guilty reminds me of a great Alan May story that years ago when the Capitals played that outdoor game against the Maple Leafs in Annapolis, a few of us decided to rent a house walking distance from the stadium. Frat party might be a good description for kind of how that night went for us. Alan was there with us until 4 a.m., I believe, on the Saturday night, had a 7 a.m. alumni game, and had a hat trick in that game.
That's amazing. That's tough to do.
To show what kind of player, a 24-hour player Alan May is. That's one of the better kind of, at least DC hockey media stories that we've been telling over the years.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive. What is it like? What's that car race? Is it Le Mans or whatever, where they're driving for all hours of the night? Alan May, he'd be my pick then for a Le Mans style hockey game. If you can play like that, that'd be impressive.
And he said to me after that, we were grabbing a beer somewhere, and he said sometimes you have to play guilty, and amazingly in that alumni situation he did.
Yes, he did. That's impressive. I mean, I never stayed up that late the night before a game, but I'm sure there's been a few guys that have.
Yeah, and for those who have not or are new to the podcast, Karl told a great few rookie party stories on the last episode, and about a coach in Montreal he had who basically wanted him to take 8,000 strides on a practice drill to make it look like he was trying hard. And so if you haven't listened to that, listen to that. We're going to tell some more Montreal stories in a couple weeks. Is that okay, Karl?
Oh yeah, that sounds good. I got quite a few of them.
I don't think we have enough time for all of them, and I'm not sure how many. I'm not sure how many of them are going to make the air without you upsetting everyone in Montreal. But we're going to see.
That's exactly it.
We're going to push the envelope in a couple of weeks on a few of those. But let's back to this team now. this is not all these injuries and all that. Anthony Mantha's out. Nick Dowd is out. TJ Oshie. We know about Nick Backstrom. So you got all these rookies in the lineup. What do you? I guess the question from me to you, Karl, is what do you remember about your younger days when it was 4 or 5 rookies on a team, and that was by design, where George McPhee was building up a team that had young guys. But what is it like when you've got an infusion of 19 to 23-year-old kids around an NHL locker room? What is that feeling like?
Yeah, well, so it's interesting because if you just look at a team like that on paper, as the other team or as the opponent, doing their pre-scout, and you see all these names on the board that you don't really know, you think, maybe easy night. That's kind of what goes through your head is we're gonna, take advantage of these guys with no experience. But that's not always the case, because all these young guys, their leash usually is quite a lot shorter. They have something to prove. They have got fresh legs typically, and they're going out there and they're buzzing around. So that's the thing with having a team full of young guys is they all feed off of each other and they all have fun. Yeah, there's nerves and stuff, and you want so badly to play to your ability and impress the other guys on the team, but also the coaching staff and the GM watching, because you're trying to cement your position there. But just being around the rink with other guys that are in the same position as you, the same age or roughly the same age, it's the best. Like, everyone always said that about me and Carly. Like, what was it like being D partners at such a young age? And being a defenseman in the NHL is tough enough as it is. And then being a young defenseman is also very tough. So you need to have confidence in your partner, and you need to have a good relationship and chemistry. And the fact that we were both 2 young guys just doing all this stuff, literally doing everything together. We were on the ice together in practice, in games. We would go to all of our meals together. We'd drive in the same car. Like, you don't really have much else going on away from the rink. So you guys just form these just really, really great bonds. And I've said it before, like we have such a good crew of guys from those years. We call ourselves the Chums because we were literally together all the time, and we wouldn't leave. We had these stupid rules where we wouldn't ever leave somewhere without one of them. So no, you couldn't leave the meal without checking in on the other guy, be like, hey, you good? Or should we stay for you? And they would say, usually a guy would just say, yeah, we're good, go ahead. Or we wouldn't ever go in the elevator without holding the elevator for somebody. Like, I say stupid rules. They were pretty stupid, but they were something that just solidified the bond. And then that made us kind of go out on the ice. And I mean, I felt played a little bit better, and we're able to read off each other and, did whatever we had to do for each other's games. And so that's something that could be really good. And maybe we don't see the impact, instantly, but down the road, 3, 4, 5 years, if that group stays together, that's something that's going to go a long way. So yeah, I just like to see them play a little bit more. I'd like to see them get a little bit more ice, have some opportunity, and it's still early in the year, so you have the ability to make a few mistakes, and you don't want to give away any games, but let the young guys get their feet wet and take a little bit of take a few minutes away maybe from some of those big guys that have to log 20 plus minutes, sometimes more, just to get through these games.
Yeah, well, we'll find out if Peter Laviolette is one of our listeners if these guys start getting more ice time. But that's what as a young player, how do you earn a coach's trust? Because there's no secret. The last couple of years of Peter Laviolette, he's been leaning on the guys he trusts, and especially that fourth line of Hagelin, Dowd, and Hathaway when it was together, and just guys who've been in the league for a while. And Alex Ovechkin's playing a ton of minutes right now because you got all these kids in the lineup. How do you, as a young player, get a veteran coach's trust?
Yeah, so I think there's probably 2 ways. One way is you produce like crazy. That's really hard to do as a young guy. So you got players that will come in and just light the lamp up all the time. I'll go back to Matthew Perreault. He came, and I don't know the exact numbers. I'm sure we can find them obviously there. He came up and I think he had like 7 points in his first 5 games, something like that. And I remember he called me and Carly. We asked him how things were going. And he joked and said, is there a better league that I can get called up to? Because this is too easy right now. And we were all dying laughing because, it's hilarious. You never expect to start off your career like that. But so you can do that and produce like crazy. And then you end up, sticking around a little bit more. But the main thing is being responsible. You want the coach to be able to count on you by listening to what they say. So if they say, okay, today we're going to be dumping in soft chips every single time we get the puck, we're soft chipping in the strong side corner. So I'm coming up to the red line, and that puck is going in deep and it's staying away from the goalie. That way we can establish our forecheck. And then you go out there and you do that every single time. Or make sure you don't, as a centerman, these are like X's and O's of the game. Make sure that you don't have your centerman get above you. So get on the offensive side of you, because if a puck, gets banked off the board or squeaks past you, then we got an odd man rush. So if you're told that by your coach, they want to see that you're listening and that you're able to do that. And that's how you earn the trust of a coach, and they'll feel better about putting you into those situations. So, those are details of the game, and sometimes they seem tedious. They're not fun. You want to score goals and take shots, but this is how, we say that games are like chess matches. Whenever a team comes in and just constantly throws that puck in behind me every single time, then I start cheating a little bit too. I don't have gaps that are as good, and I'm giving them a little bit more space. And then come the third period or even second period, next thing you know, that team is taking advantage of that extra 3-4 feet that I've given them because I'm expecting them to dump pucks in. So as a young guy, you just need to listen and you need to execute the game plan. And if you can put up points, then that obviously helps. But being responsible, I think that's what has kept a lot of guys in the league for a really, really long time that haven't necessarily produced on the score sheet. And that would be my game plan as a young guy.
Yeah, and eventually these guys are going to have to play more. And Hendrix Lapierre got sent back to the queue. I think the Capitals, it was pretty clear that given it was a nice kind of cameo for him, but he needs to play games. And given that Brett Leeson now has passed him, Axel Jonsson-Fjallby in theory has passed him, Alexi Protas has passed him, Connor McMichael, who was a year older, seems to have the grip on this, but this team is winning and keeping up with everybody right now because of Alex Ovechkin scoring. I don't know what else to say new. Do you have anything new to say about Alex Ovechkin scoring? It seems like every time it's like, okay, let's talk about Alex Ovechkin passing this next guy on the list, and this time it's Brett Hull.
Well, yeah, it's because it's so impressive. You always want to talk about something like that. It's amazing to see. You're witnessing history almost every week now with who he's passing. He's going to pass Brett Hull soon, and then he's got the power play goal record coming right up there with Dave Andrechuk. So yep. That's why you talk about him. It's very, very impressive. But I think one of the things that I really like and is seeing that Tom is starting to chip in a little bit more, scoring a couple goals and just getting involved. He's playing a ton right now with those two guys, Kuzi and Ovi. So that also helps for sure. But you're going to need scoring from him. You're going to need scoring from a couple other guys because, at some point, I guess it's possible that you don't go cold, but at some point you go cold, at least for a little bit, couple weeks, whatever it is. And then when that happens, knock on wood, it's not Ovi and Kuzi, but if they do, who's going to be putting those pucks in? Who's going to be driving that play offensively? Hopefully you get Osh back and then Backy at some point here, and then you can take a little bit of a sigh of relief, but you want guys to be able to, like I said, get those minutes, get some confidence, and then be a little bit more well-rounded because it's, there's good teams that can shut down a line, and then if that happens, whose number are you gonna call after that?
Exactly right. What I'm going to be looking forward to see the next couple of weeks is how this goaltending situation goes. Ilya Samsonov, Vitek Vanacek, Zach Fukali, and kind of who's going to take the reins here. Penguins coming up on Sunday. Long road trip coming up. As we wrap up here, Karl. What are you looking to see out of this team in the next couple of weeks?
Well, I think there's some pretty stiff competition. You got the game tonight. The Wings have been playing solid. They got some really, really good young, exciting players. So that's something I'm just excited to watch. I think it's on a few people's radar, not typically the rivalry that you are as tuned in for, but still exciting to see. They got Columbus coming right up after that, and they got a lot of really good young players and offensive minded players too. And I think they're sitting at 7-3 right now, so no slouch there. And then of course Pitt. I mean, that's just a fun game to watch. Obviously, everyone's going to be tuned into that, whether or not they got their full rosters. It's still a fun game, and Pitt is, I think, sitting at the bottom of the division right now, but it doesn't seem to matter with them. They can kind of play from wherever and still find a way and are always pretty dangerous. So just watching to see how the Caps play against, a little bit stiffer competition and then, a good rivalry game. It's just another test, just to see where they're at mentally and who can step up to support the top line. So just some fun hockey. 3 games in 4 nights is tough. So, we'll see if 24 minutes, 25 minutes a night, the guys can survive in 3 and 4.
Sure, and that Penguins game is so fun. I've got Tom Brady in town against the Washington football team on Sunday. I'll be racing from FedEx Field in Landover to the game to be able to watch. We hope is Sidney Crosby against Alex Ovechkin for the 1,000th time, but we can't get enough of it. Thanks again for Karl for doing this for another week, and we'll talk to you all next week.